Thanks for saving me. By a cell. Chapter 2. A phone call is here! A phone call is here! Izuku's phone wakes him up the next morning, shortly before his alarm. Half asleep, he pats his covers in search of it, answering it without even glancing at his caller ID. Hello? Morning, Midoriya. Izuku nearly drops his phone as he bolts upright in bed. Sorry for calling you so early. Todoroki-san! He screeches. What? How? Good morning? Why are you calling me? He's still asleep. That's it. He must be dreaming. That's the only explanation possible for Todoroki's voice in his ear before 8 a.m. So husky and warm and low. Oh, dear. I wanted to give you a warning, Todoroki says. Have you seen the news yet? The news? No. Izuku blinks in confusion. 1 second. He doesn't have a TV in his tiny apartment, but he grabs his laptop, fumbling to keep the phone caught between his shoulder and cheek as he boots it up. He should probably just put it on speaker, but he still can't really believe that it's Todoroki on the other end. Izuku doesn't really want to put the phone down and have Todoroki talk to him from farther away. Okay, he's being creepy, isn't he? He doesn't know which news site to check, so he just pulls up NHK World to look at the homepage for what feels like the 100th time in far too few hours. His heart skips several beats too many. Why am I... His eyes feel like they're bugging out of his head. Why am I on the front page of the news? Todoroki says. It's true. News coverage of the villain attack from yesterday is plastered all over the homepage, but for some reason, one of the primary stories seems to be the one about himself and Todoroki facing the villain in the chemistry building. There's a video taken from one of the helicopters he saw of him trying to get people under the fire escape, Todoroki showing up to use his ice to save it from collapsing. Then the camera zooms in on Izuku talking to the girl before turning and running back inside the building. There's multiple headlines, videos, articles. Heroics university student saves 24 lives. Who is Midoriya Izuku? Man evacuates people from collapsing building. What he does next will shock you. And finally, quirkless boy wonder rescues seasoned pro. Oh, he says softly. Midoriya. Izuku doesn't respond at first, too busy staring at the headline. Todoroki prompts him again questioningly, and he shakes his head to clear it. The tone of some of the articles leaves a sour taste in his mouth, like what happens makes Todoroki less than capable just because Izuku doesn't have a quirk. Nothing, I just, He clenches a fist in his blankets. They found out I was quirkless. That, Todoroki says. I think that may be why the story blew up in the first place. I wasn't expecting it to gain this much traction, or I would have warned you yesterday. Izuku utters a little whine in the back of his throat. I'm sorry. There's a brief silence on the other end of the line that feels like it lasts slightly longer than it should, before Todoroki asks, Why are you apologizing? You didn't know I was quirkless, Izuku says, and I didn't tell you, and how... There was no reason for you to inform me, Todoroki interrupts. I should be the one apologizing. No, it's fine. I know that kind of thing is private, Todoroki continues, but I don't think most people are thinking about it in this instance, and I don't care if you're quirkless. Izuku sucks in an unsteady breath. You don't? Not at all. Izuku knows. He's known with every fiber of his being that Todoroki is a good person. He's always believed that. But this one tiny thing that Todoroki has acknowledged and accepted about him is so personal. It's so different from knowing Todoroki jumps into burning buildings to save civilians. It's something he's done only for Izuku. Izuku is grateful. How did people even find out who I am? He asks tentatively. Todoroki says it for the first time since they'd met the night before. He sounds unsure of himself. I told them. You did? Izuku asks. But why? Because I can't take credit for everything, Todoroki tells him, and because I wanted people to know who you are. After what you did, you deserve at least that much. Izuku can feel his eyes welling up already. Jeez, the sun's barely in the sky and he's already crying. I'm sorry if I overstepped, Todoroki says. No, Izuku swipes at his watery eyes. I still can't really believe all this happened, but it does mean a lot to me, Todoroki-san, that you thought of me. There's a soft huff at the other end of the line. What's that? The laugh. Midoriya, I haven't done anything but think about you since last night. Izuku does tap the phone this time. When he picks it up again, his cheeks are on fire, phone slipping in his sweaty hands. Todoroki mercifully does not seem to have noticed and is still talking. Save 2 dozen people. You didn't hesitate. Someone I know who I admire a lot used to tell me when I was still in school. That's the mark of every great hero. Izuku doesn't know whether to be more giddy over his praise or the fact that Todoroki has been thinking about him. He keeps scrolling through news articles, some of his awkwardness fading as the surrealism of the moment starts to sink in when there's a knock on his door. Oh, 1 second, he says, hopping off his bed. There's someone at the door. Ah, Midoriya, wait. Todoroki starts to say, but Izuku is already opening the door, phone still held to his ear. 1,000 blinding flashbulb pops go off in his face, leaving him stunned and somewhat terrified. Midoriya-san! Cries one of at least a dozen reporters, all with mics pointed straight at him, cameras rolling to capture his every move. Can you give us a quote about your daring rescue on campus yesterday? That sounds like what I called to warn you about, Todoroki says. The last shot the reporters get before the door slams in their faces is Midoriya Izuku, eyes wide, in a set of official Shouto hero uniform pajamas that are slightly too big for him. Todoroki-san! He whispers, leaning against the door and gasping for air. He can still hear the clamor outside his apartment, people shouting his name. Help me! Don't panic, Todoroki says. I have a plan. The plan turns out to be a joint interview on one of the most popular variety shows on Japanese television. Izuku isn't really sure how he manages it, maybe by throwing around his agency's considerable weight, but Todoroki stops the media from harassing him in the interim before the interview. They arrange for filming to occur on a day when Izuku doesn't have any early classes. The morning of the interview, he arrives by train, following Todoroki's very detailed directions. The studio is unbelievably bright and loud, and he's already sweating in his suit, maroon with pinstripes. It clashes horribly with his shoes. The receptionist at the desk is distracted by multiple phone lines and doesn't immediately look up when he nervously introduces himself. Who are you here to see? She asks vaguely. Todoroki Shouto? Izuku asks, feeling clueless himself. Todoroki had said to ask for him, but Izuku is suddenly sure that everything he is doing currently is wrong. The receptionist looks up at him. Oh! She says, oh, you're Midoriya-kun. Sorry, I'll buzz you through. Just go around the corner there to the elevators and up to the 6th floor. He pushes through the turnstile once she's unlocked it and does as asked. His knees knock together the whole way up to the 6th floor. The elevator dings and the doors slide open, and Izuku's panic goes tenfold. There's tons of people there. Very stylish, busy-looking people with high heels and sleek hair and holding clipboards. This contrasts with Izuku in every way possible. He is wearing sneakers, his hair is a bird's nest, and he has absolutely no clipboard of which to speak. He wonders if there are extras around, if it would go unnoticed if he just snagged one when no one was looking. He needs a safety clipboard. Midoriya, over here. A voice calls out, and he turns and sees Todoroki standing there. Izuku is fairly sure he dies in a sense to heaven in that moment. True, the other day he thought that Todoroki couldn't have looked better than he did, disheveled and grungy from the fight. That was probably a combination of shock, delirium, and adrenaline, however, because now Izuku sees that he was a fool. Interview-ready Todoroki is a whole different beast, and that beast is dangerous. Todoroki isn't wearing a suit, just a slim-fitted dark navy blazer with a white button-down underneath. His trousers, also navy, hug his long legs. The shirt is some thin, soft material that clings to his chest distractingly, and the top buttons are undone so the skin of his collarbone and a little lower peeks through, exposed. The watch on his wrist is a bit chunky, but not unattractively so, and looks incredibly expensive. His short hair is combed back off his forehead head swept over from right to left so that more white than red shows. He looks simultaneously more casual than Izuku and yet 1,000,000 times more put together. And the outfit with its tailored lines and clean cuts really shows off just how big he is. Taken all together, this is, in Izuku's opinion, 100% more life-threatening than a villain attack could ever hope to be. Good to see you again. Todoroki greets him as Izuku joins them. You too! Izuku stammers. Did I overdress? I wasn't sure what to wear. A stylish woman in glasses standing next to Todoroki eyes Izuku like a hawk. He recognizes her a moment later as Todoroki's manager. When she taps her clipboard with her pen, he has to resist the urge to hide. Should we go zoom into hair and makeup? She asks. It's nearly time to go on. Todoroki's face molds into the sort of hardened blankness he exudes when he disagrees with something. Izuku has seen him do it in 1,000,000 interviews. He's fine, Todoroki tells her. Here. He reaches for Izuku, who stands very still and tries not to make any sudden movements. Todoroki takes his jacket off his shoulders and passes it to his manager, and then, after a moment's consideration, removes Izuku's buckeye as well. His mouth twitches. Top button. He says, Oh, right! Izuku says, hands flying up to undo the button under his throat. Todoroki nods. Better. An assistant scurries up to the two of them to tell them they can proceed on to the set. Ready? Todoroki asks Izuku. Izuku erupts into nervous giggles that he has to work very hard to stifle. No! This time Todoroki does actually offer him a tiny smile. It'll be over quick, promise. The set, like the rest of the studio, is very brightly lit. Izuku and Todoroki are led to a blindingly white couch where their hosts, an energetic comedy duo, greet them exuberantly. Todoroki is a fairly frequent guest of theirs, and they genuinely seem to know him well, wasting no time teasing him about something or other, some old inside joke. They're very engaging. Even Todoroki cracks a smile here and there, seeming very much at ease. Midoriya, let me introduce you, Todoroki says, and the two turn their attention to him, beaming in welcome. This is Kaneda-san and Mori-san. They were kind enough to fit us into their schedule on short notice. Kind enough? Mori exclaims, eyes wide. I thought Kentaka was pulling my leg when he told me you asked for an interview. I thought hell was frozen over. He accused me of doctoring your voicemail, Kaneda protests very indignantly. I still haven't recovered from his first interview, Mori says. Do you remember that? The one where you made it a game, Izuku chimes in, clapping his hands together in delight, to try and make him smile, but he didn't. The other three all turn to stare at him, and he realizes too late that he's given himself away. You remember that? Todoroki asks as all the blood drains from Izuku's face. But before he can shrivel and die of embarrassment, Kaneda and Mori both start roaring with laughter. I can't believe there's still someone who remembers that, Kaneda crows. Besides us, that is. You want to know a secret? Mori whispers conspiratorially to Izuku. He smiled as soon as the camera stopped rolling. Really? Izuku asks eagerly, curiosity wetting out. He is stunned. He never knew this about that interview. This is true behind-the-scenes knowledge of Todoroki Shouto. I knew what they were trying the whole time, Todoroki says dryly. A friend found out and warned me. It was unfortunate like having earphone jack on the show right before you, Kaneda admits. But we had fun just like we will today. They're signaling. Feeling much less panicky, Izuku takes his seat beside Todoroki on the couch. Welcome back, welcome, Kaneda says, enthusiasm bubbling out of him. Next up, we have two incredibly excited guests who have caused a big stir these past few days. I think everyone will be very familiar with one of our favorite returning guests, Todoroki Shouto. Todoroki nods at the camera stomachly as the audience cheers and claps. But our second guest is very new to being a hero. Please fondly welcome Midoriya Izuku. Izuku is on his feet reflexively before he can stop himself bowing awkwardly and exhaling a nervous, "Thank you for taking care of me." Immediately, their two hosts start laughing about this, comparing it to Todoroki's barely there acknowledgement. Amazing! He really gives you this feeling of gratitude. That's true. But then, Todoroki-san, The studio audience laughs uproariously as Todoroki stares back at them impassively. Izuku waves his hands frantically. I'm sorry, no, it's because I'm really nothing like a hero, he tries to say. I'm just very honored to be here. Ah, so Todoroki-san must not be very honored then, Mori says with a wicked twinkle in his eye, and Izuku starts stammering in despair. Before he can apologize any further, Todoroki grabs the back of his shirt and tugs him back down onto the couch. I told him you were nice, so don't tease him, Todoroki says with something approaching an admonishment in his voice. The hosts capitulate readily, but he still plants a hand reassuringly on Izuku's shoulder. Besides, it's alright, I don't mind that he keeps showing me up. Izuku gapes at him as everybody laughs again. Finally, now that pleasantries have been exchanged, the hosts move on to conducting the actual interview portion. Izuku discreetly tries to wipe his hands on his pants. His palms are as sweaty as they've ever been, and he can feel perspiration gathering at his hairline. He wishes he had a handkerchief handy, but it's too late for that. First things first, you had a special announcement you wanted to make, Mori prompts. Todoroki nods. Yes, I just found out I was nominated for the Rescue of the Year award at this year's annual Japan's Hero Gala. I'm really grateful for everyone's support. There are a lot of ohs from the viewers. Izuku is among them, although the noise he makes is more of a squawk of excitement. Congratulations, Todoroki-san! He yelps. He knew Todoroki would get nominated for something, and this is one of the most prestigious categories. Todoroki gives him a tiny fat smile. I'm sure I owe that nomination to you. Izuku's brain cannot compute this outright. Whew! Speaking of that, Kaneda cuts in, pointing at Izuku. Midoriya-kun, the entire nation of Japan wants to know more about you. You're an ordinary university student, yes. Very ordinary, Izuku confirms, drawing another laugh from the audience. Before the attack that day was just a day like any other for you, Kaneda says, and now his tone has changed to that of a storyteller's. A hush falls over everyone as he helps Izuku weave the tale for the cameras. Can you talk us through that, up to when the attack started? That's easy enough for Izuku to do, and he finds himself settling again as he tells them about his school, what he majors in, and his job. He explains that he likes showing the groups of touring students around and answering their questions, although sometimes he wishes he could be less awkward. Ah, Kaneda notes. So you're saying usually people expect you to be intimidating, but actually they make you feel nervous. Mori chimes in. Kind of, he's more afraid of you than you are of him. I'm literally always more afraid, Izuku says, covering his face with his hand. But, Mori says, leaning forward, nearly on the edge of his seat, when the building you were in was attacked, we can show the viewers what that looked like. A large screen behind them comes to life with images of the chemistry building from that morning, flames and smoke pouring out of the first floor windows. The audience murmurs in shock, and Mori turns back to Izuku. Midoriya-kun, can you tell us what happened? Oh, sure! To a rapt audience, Izuku relays the story. How he basically freaked out with everyone else at first. How the smoke started to choke him and the floor started to sway beneath his feet. How he realized eventually that none of the high school students he was watching could be expected to take charge, and how he had led them outside. Incredible, Kaneda says. And Todoroki-san, it was about them that you showed up, wasn't it? Right, Todoroki says, and begins to tell his side of the story from that point onward. So this is where everyone wonders exactly what happened, and Todoroki-san, maybe you could clarify. The kids had all made it to safety when Midoriya-kun ran back inside the building? Yes, Todoroki says, because they weren't all safe. There was one still trapped inside. Wait, what? Midoriya-kun? One of the girls had gotten stuck under some rubble, Izuku confirms. It's so lucky she wasn't seriously hurt. I think I've seen some interviews with her. Hamlet time. Yes, Izuku nods. I went back to help, but I couldn't. This part was still a bit hard to dwell on, and his throat starts to close up at the memory. He remembers staring into a young girl's frightened eyes and thinking, she must realize she's going to die, all because he hadn't been strong enough to do anything. The concrete was too heavy. I thought... That's when I got there, Todoroki says, taking over. Izuku exhales slowly. Relax. The other kids told me what happened, so I came in after them. I got there just in time to hear Midoriya saying he wouldn't leave. Wouldn't leave, even though we couldn't do anything? Mori presses. Why? The question is directed at Izuku. He swallows, hesitates. She would have been alone. Another murmur goes through the audience as Mori's eyebrows raise. I know there's no recording of what happened inside the building, Todoroki says, but I heard him promise not to leave. I think he would have stayed even if he had to face the villain by himself. But, Kaneda says, doesn't that mean Midoriya-kun would have... Yes, Todoroki says, blunt as always. He'd have died. There is a very long period of silence, during which Izuku mostly stares down at his hands in his lap. I think we can all say, Mori eventually speaks up, that we're glad you were willing to take those risks. In fact, we do have a message for you. For me? Izuku asks, dumbfounded. The large screen that has been showing footage of the attack changes to a different image, the inside of someone's home it looks like. Two girls wave out at the audience and Izuku yelps, Hana-chan! It's Hana and a friend, the one who told Izuku she was still trapped inside the building. They both seem to be having a hard time not lapsing into giggles, but Hana regains control quickly in order to talk. Hi, Midoriya-senpai, she says brightly. Hi, Izuku says. It's pre-recorded. Kaneda tells him in a stage whisper. Izuku freezes with his hand in the air, face going hot as the audience laughs. Akemi and I wanted to tell you, Hana continues, that you were awesome! Even though it was so dangerous, you were really brave also. She twists her hands together nervously before bursting out. We're both really sorry that we laughed at you before. Please forget about that because you're actually really cool. She glares determinedly into the camera for a second, like she's daring him to argue. Izuku laughs at this, stunned. He is very much not really cool, but he appreciates the sentiment immensely. I'll never forget you came back for me, Hana says. Thank you. The message is a short one. Hana is already waving goodbye, and the screen is going blank again. Izuku, however, just sits there, too stunned to know how to reply. Midoriya-kun, Mori says finally, surprisingly gentle. This one doesn't sound to me like you're always afraid. Well, that's the thing, Izuku stutters, because it all seems very grand, but when it comes down to it, I don't think I've ever been more scared in my life. I really don't know how pros do that all the time. He glances at Todoroki, feeling grateful all over again, and is startled to find Todoroki staring at him just as attentively as everyone else, even though he was there and he knows this part of the story. Being a hero doesn't mean never feeling afraid, Todoroki says more to Izuku than to the cameras or the audience. Kaneda hums. True, Sandra. So now, the two of you are both in the building with the villain. What happens next? Retelling this part of the story to such a captive audience is honestly a thrill. Izuku gets overly excited describing the way Todoroki had removed the rubble and shielded them from the first explosion, and everyone gasps at the last-second rescue. His explanation starts to veer a bit too much into the technical side of things. The villain had been explained later on to cause explosions using sound wave frequencies, which was fascinating when Izuku wasn't in danger of being murdered by it. And then there was the marvel that was Todoroki's ice density, temperature, cryogenic structure, the hosts gently steering back towards the account of the actual events. So then, Kaneda says, I think this is the most amazing part of the story to me. You saved everyone with chemistry! Izuku laughs sheepishly. Not exactly. I wasn't mixing chemicals or anything like that. That's a Hollywood stuff. It wasn't quite that, no, but he thought incredibly fast. Todoroki muses, recalling the moment. Even before that, he had a good handle on our weaknesses, the villain's strengths. I remember thinking, who is this guy? The audience laughs pleasantly, and Izuku ducks his head as a whole rush of something he's not used to feeling comes crashing over him. Todoroki had acknowledged his quick thinking. He's second to no one in that area, well known for being one of the most well-collected and fastest acting pros in a crisis. For him to have thought that highly of Izuku, it makes Izuku feel genuinely proud of himself. Wow! Perhaps sensing that Izuku is far too overwhelmed to talk, Todoroki continues. After I got hit, I was basically useless. I thought I could use my fire, but turns out that would have probably killed us. He looks contemplative. I don't think there was any way out of that room. The other pros didn't get there for another 4 or 5 minutes, and by then it would have been too late. But Midoriya found a way, prompts Kaneda. Todoroki explains how Izuku had figured out the connection with the anesthetic, and how he and Hana had searched for the diethyl ether. He remembered the name of the chemical, which makes Izuku feel even more warmly fond. Hold everyone! Mori shouts, breaking some of the tension built up from such a harrowing tale. That's completely Hollywood! To be honest, I could barely believe it either, Todoroki admits. But he just kept talking. He kept Hana calm despite everything. I could see how scared he was, but he kept trying to smile. And I just got this feeling from him, like I could trust him with my life, and that he'd get us out. Lots of ohs from the audience follow this statement. Todoroki tells the rest of the story as Izuku stares at him, speechless, unable to believe what he just heard. Amazing! Kaneda says when he's done. Really amazing, isn't it? The audience claps their agreement, and Izuku tries again to execute an awkward bow from his seated position. One thing I keep thinking while listening to that is, how did Midoriya know to do all those things? And I think one reason is because you're very interested in heroes, right? Oh, yes! Izuku nods, having somewhat recovered from before. It's kind of a hobby of mine, even outside school. But you, and correct me if I'm mistaken, are quirkless, aren't you? Izuku had expected this to come up. Todoroki starts to interject. I don't know that that's relevant to... It's okay, Izuku tells him quickly. It's not a thing he advertises, but he doesn't like to seem embarrassed about it either. It's just who he is. I am, yes. Quirkless, I mean. I know it's unusual. When I was still really little, I wanted to be a hero more than anything, and well, I couldn't, of course. There are some sympathetic noises, and he waves his hands hurriedly. But it made me really, really interested in them. I've always thought heroes are amazing, so I wanted to study them, and who knows, maybe at some point I'll still be able to get involved in some other way. More applause follows his words as the hosts commend him for pursuing his dreams in the face of great adversity. It's kind of embarrassing because it's not like he's the only person who's ever had to make the best out of bad luck before, but it is also nice to not be told he's on a fool's errand. So you know everything there is to know about heroes then? Kaneda says. Yeah, kind of. Izuku says. He grins shyly. I'm pretty good at impressions, too. Oh! Mori exclaims delightedly. Do so! And we'll try to guess! Oh, okay. Izuku does a blank at first. It's not often people actually want to see his hero impressions. He goes for the first one he can think of, steeples his fingers, smiles brightly, and says, Everyone! Do your best and we'll all get through this together! The crowd... And Mori actually shouts in shock. He points at Izuku. Gravity! He says, that was totally the anti-gravity hero gravity! Yes, you got it! Izuku says, beaming. Okay, what about... He makes his arms stiff and movements robotic as he says sternly, your evil thing stops here, and then you won't get past me! That's ingenio! Kaneda says, 100%! How does he make even his face look like them suddenly? Mori wonders. Maybe he does have a quirk? There's a smirk from next to him, and Todoroki puts a hand over his mouth, but not quite fast enough to hide the smile growing there. He's making Todoroki laugh! Keep going! Be relentless, Midoriya Kern! Everybody wants one more, so Izuku thinks hard before going for broke, adopting a ferocious grin, and growling out, I'll kill you! Die, scum! It's Grand Zero! Grand Zero is here! Everyone stop laughing immediately, or it will be bad! The whole audience is in an absolute uproar. The hosts are pretending to cling to each other in fright, and Todoroki gives up, putting both hands over his face as he dissolves into laughter. The hosts jump out of their seats and start telling the cameraman to zoom in on this rarest of sights as Todoroki tries to turn away from them. It takes a very long time for things to calm down again. Izuku can't stop smiling. He made Todoroki laugh. He has a playlist of interviews saved where Todoroki smiles, but outright laughter is so rare he can count the number of videos on one hand. Now there will be one more. It's almost time for us to wrap up, Kaneda says. But before that, I have to know, who is your favorite hero, Midoriya? It has to be Shouto, Mori says. Oh, I guess he's my second favorite, Izuku confirms. Second? Mori gasps like he's been personally offended. Kaneda puts a comforting hand on Todoroki's shoulder, which Todoroki just stares at. Belatedly, Izuku realizes his grave mistake. He gasps even louder than the host. No! No! Stay strong, Todoroki-san! Kaneda says. Todoroki shakes his head amused. He doesn't have to say I'm his favorite. But Todoroki-san, I admire everything about you! Izuku tries to clarify somewhat desperately. I've looked up to you for years! It really is no competition between Todoroki and the rest. He likes other heroes, but he adores Todoroki. What do you admire most about him, Midoriya-kun? Kaneda prompts. Really, everything! Izuku says, and his face is going red, but he has to explain properly. I always thought he seemed like he wanted to be a hero just to help other people. Izuku fidgets in his seat. There's a lot he wants to say. A lot built up inside him from the years and years of observation and idolization, crystallizing with utter clarity the past few days. He might not ever talk to Todoroki again after this interview. This is probably Izuku's one and only chance to tell him the things he always wanted to say. He takes a deep breath and turns to look at Todoroki. I've been a fan since you became active, so I've watched you since the beginning, Izuku says. The very beginning. I remember you, from UA sports festivals, but I think the first time I heard about your work as a pro hero was the fight against Razor Edge. Oh, that is far back, the hosts confirm as the audience makes some noises of amazement. I think what amazes me most is how hard you always work to reassure people, Izuku continues. You've mentioned how that kind of thing was difficult for you at first because you weren't very outgoing, but I think it's obvious how much you care about your fans and the people you helped. And now I got to see that firsthand. I can't believe how nice you actually are. Even your smile it makes me so happy. I know some people still like to say you're cold, but even before I knew you, you always made me feel safe. Izuku trails off, realizing too late that his infatuation is palpable in everything he says. Todoroki is silent, watching him with a frighteningly unreadable expression. The hosts also seem quietly stunned. Also, I have your entire figure series collection! Izuku bursts out. Even the limited edition models! The one saving throw as the mark of a true fan. Actually, he has a lot more than just models. His Shouto memorabilia collection is as vast as his All Might one, although somehow, astonishingly, even more embarrassing. In his defense, he discovered Todoroki right around the very fraught days of his teen years, and Todoroki is very attractive. There are some fan comics Izuku has tucked carefully away that he would not want anybody to find, ever. I take it back, Kaneda says, breaking the silence. Clearly you have a very high opinion of him. Izuku nods in panic. I do! Todoroki finally blinks, his pretty eyes very wide. Midoriya. He's my favorite active pro hero, Izuku rushes to clarify. The reason I said second is because my first favorite hero has always been All Might. I wanted to be just like him when I was younger. Todoroki says, I think I can handle placing after him. Izuku smiles at him, relieved, and he smiles back. What made you want to be All Might? Kaneda asks. This is Izuku's oldest memory. I wanted to save people, he tells them, with a smile. The hosts nod understandingly. I sense a common thread, Kaneda says, and now I think you can say you've achieved it. We are so sadly out of time for today, but thank you both for joining us this morning. Thank you so much for having me, Izuku says before turning to Todoroki. Thank you for inviting me. They wrap up after that, but get to spend a little bit more time chatting with the hosts and more of Todoroki's team. The scary, stylish, bespectacled manager seems to have warmed to Izuku considerably, and seems very pleased with how well he knows Todoroki's brand and history, which Kaneda and Mori kept randomly quizzing him on. Todoroki keeps trying to make them knock it off, which only encourages them more. Izuku is enjoying himself so much that he almost forgets the time. It's an errant glance at his phone that makes him squeak a surprised exclamation and start apologizing to everyone as he hastily makes his goodbyes. I should go if I want to catch the next train back. I'll be late for my afternoon class otherwise. We can arrange a driver for you, Todoroki said. I go. His manager nods, already making a call. Should it be more than 3 minutes? Is that alright, Midoriya? Oh, yes, that's really generous. Izuku says, having Todoroki and his team go out of their way for him makes him feel extraordinarily guilty, but it's already in motion, it seems. They're very efficient. They bid the show hosts a last farewell and head down to the lobby. A sleek black car is already waiting at the curb, and Izuku is already wondering if it will be too embarrassing to roll up to campus inside it when Todoroki walks around and gets in behind the driver. Izuku jumps in the back on the passenger side. You're coming with me? Your university isn't much out of the way of my agency, so I thought I might as well, Todoroki says. Would you rather go separately? No! Izuku gasps. This is okay. All right, Todoroki says. To the school first, Todoroki-sama, the driver asks. Yes. They're both quiet for a few awkward moments as the car pulls away from the curb. Izuku sneaks a glance over at Todoroki to see the hero is watching the world go by outside the window. His placid expression gives away nothing of what he's thinking, but he still manages to look regally handsome. Izuku barely feels worthy of being in his presence. I didn't not want you to come with me, he says softly. I just wasn't expecting it. Todoroki says, turning to look at him. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Oh, no, I'm not, Izuku says. He's just flustered, but that's nothing new. Todoroki still looks unsure, so Izuku barrels ahead to a new topic. Congratulations again on being nominated. Todoroki shakes his head. I should be thanking you, he says. I meant what I said. I wouldn't be nominated if not for you. You don't know that, Izuku protests. You had some amazing saves the past year, like that flip bus in April or the baby in August. Todoroki's mouth twitches and Izuku realizes he's revealing his hyper-focus a bit too obviously. Again, sorry. There's a reason they announced my nomination now, and we both know it, Todoroki says, and even Izuku can admit that's true. What happened at the university has really caught everyone's attention. Todoroki clears his throat. Seriously, though, I can't believe you remember which month those other things happened. I hadn't realized you were... I didn't know you were such a... Izuku stares at his knees, cheeks burning up. A fanboy? An expert, Todoroki amends politely. But now that I do, I can't help but feel I've made a terrible impression. Izuku whips his head around to stare at him. Todoroki is watching him very seriously, like he truly believes what he's just said. Never has anyone been so hopelessly wrong, and Izuku doesn't mean to say what he does next, but his thoughts are completely jumbled between don't fucking let him think that and I never think something so stupid, and what comes out is don't be fucking stupid! Todoroki's eyebrows lift in shock. Izuku claps his hands to his mouth with a strangled shriek. Am I, Todoroki says slowly, being fucking stupid? That's not what I meant to say! Izuku wails, slumping forward until his forehead touches his knees. You haven't made a terrible impression at all, unlike me! I don't know exactly what you meant to say, Todoroki says, but I think I got the gist. It seems very emphatic, which is fortunate for me. It is? Izuku asks, still mortified. Well, given I wanted to arrange a tour of our hero agency for you. Todoroki says, yes. Izuku slowly raises his head to look at him again. Todoroki is watching him out of the corner of his eye, like he's afraid if he looks at Izuku full on, Izuku will fling himself out of the moving vehicle! Honestly, the assumption might not be that far off. Arrange a what? Izuku asks dumbly. I might have thought to ask sooner if I'd known about your expertise, Todoroki says, still judiciously refraining from calling Izuku a total nerd. But listening to you in the interview, hearing your interests, I thought that maybe that would be a good way of thanking you. Well, but... Izuku flounders to find the right words as he comprehends what Todoroki is saying. You already did! The interview was the thanks part. Subjecting you to being a talk show victim isn't exactly what I'd call a proper thank you, Todoroki says. That was just to get the press off your back. Maybe this is a bit egotistical of me to offer. I just thought... It's not! Izuku practically yells. No, this is very... He waves his hands by his face excitably and then laughs too loud. Yes! Please, absolutely! Todoroki blinks at his increase volume level. So you would like to visit. It would literally be the best thing that could ever happen to me, Izuku tells him. Oh, Todoroki says, great, I'll set it up. Then he smirks the tiniest bit. Also, second best. Izuku cocks his head. Huh? It would be the second best thing. Todoroki explains. The best would be seeing All Might's agency, right? Izuku puts his face in his hands again, peeking through his fingers so he can watch as Todoroki's smile widens to an outright shit-eating grin. Todoroki-san!